Hi everyone, finally I have this Fuji X-T4 camera in my hands, so this is a hands-on review and it's very interesting to me since I'm a Fuji X-T3 owner, and now I'm gonna compare these two cameras and decide whether it is worth upgrading or it is not. And first of all, we'll look at the bodies, how do they compare and what is different. Well, what I can say instantly that X-T4 is a bit larger and a bit heavier. Now you see these cameras side by side, and well, I'll show you as for the size difference. Well, if you look at them side by side, you'll see that the X-T4 is just a tiny bit bigger. I have totally identical lenses on both cameras, and I can say that X-T4 feels well, more heavy than this camera. The difference is about 100 grams, but in reality this thing is heavier, so bear this in mind. What changes in design can we notice? First of all, these wheels. Here we have the still and the movie modes here, and I admit that this is very important because on this camera you have the exposure settings, exposure metering settings on this wheel, and it is uncomfortable to use, and this is one of the functions that I personally, for example, don't use quite a lot. So you have one of your primary wheels assigned to a function that is not of top importance, and I admit that this is very nice that they made it like this one, because on this camera, in order to put it into video mode, you have to use this wheel to put it on the edge position, and here somewhere in the middle you have the S, which means usual photo mode. Then you have this multi-exposure function, ADV mode and panoramas. Whereas here they put those modes at the end of the wheel, and I think that this is much better because normally you don't use these things quite a lot, and here you have them very close to your usual mode. Quite often when I change from video to photo, I can incidentally put it here or like here, and these modes they're in JPEG, and this is really, well, not nice when you shoot in JPEG instead of RAW mode. And in this camera the design is better because well, you have the HDR and the photo modes, so it's more comfortable for you to use. As for other buttons, little has changed because, well, they've changed the places of the Q menu and the exposure lock button. This is also comfortable to have it here, but I wouldn't say that this is bad either. Well, Q button here, it's okay for me. I have also noticed an additional button here. You see this button, because here we don't have this button here. Well, if you look at the front of these bodies, you don't notice any significant changes. Personally, I bought this special button, which is for beautiful photos, and here we don't have this button, but you can buy it online for any Fuji camera. One of the major upgrades in the X-T4 is this rotatable flip screen. You can use it in all directions that you want. You can shoot yourself in a vlog style, you can move it like here. Well, some people, some Fuji fans don't like it because for street style photography this kind of screen is more preferable, but it's up to you. Some people, well, if you like vlogging style, if you need to shoot lots of selfie videos, this type of screen is better. But this screen for some people may be better. It's up to you. Let's have a look at the menu, what new features this camera has. So, as for the movie modes, well, we have the same 4K 60 frames per second with various bit rates, but this depends on the codec that you choose. As for the codecs, this camera has new options. You see what you can change as for the options for the video. If you'd like to shoot in 10-bit, you have to stick to that well, half-usable H.265 codec, which I personally strongly dislike. Let's check the Full HD speed recording. If we turn it on, we'll have the 240 frames per second, which we can slow down 10 times, as you see, or fold that 4 times to 60 frames per second. But you can't shoot 240 frames per second without slow motion. Oh, I wouldn't say that this is a great disadvantage, but this is what we have. What else I want to check is the crop mode in the 4K 60 frames per second. If I turn this on, let's have a look here. You see, crop. It's a crop 1.18, same as in the X-T3. So if you use this top mode, well, you'll have to bear in mind that your image will be like 18% cropped. If I turn this off, I put usual, for example, 24 frames per second, the image is a bit larger and this text disappeared. This camera has some new film simulations, so these are the same as classic chrome. What classic negative is something X-T3 doesn't have, but if you wish, you can upload this profile to your imaging software such as Lightroom or Capture One and apply this onto the RAW files. But here you can shoot videos using these profiles or JPEG out of camera, and the eternal bleach bypass. I see some new feature. It's called fix movie crop magnifications. For example, if I turn it on and then go into the 4K 60 frames per second, what shall I see with this function turned on? So we have the crop 1.29, so it's even bigger, it crops even more. And if I change it, for example, to 24 frames per second, it stays the same. So what this function does, it unifies all your videos to the same cropping level. So it doesn't eliminate the crop, but it applies same crop on all the videos. In some situations, this may be useful. One of the new key features is the IS. So this camera has IBIS, in-body image stabilization, using its image sensor. And you can use it either with the optical stabilization of your lens or with the electronic stabilization. I want to remind you that the X-T3 has only a stabilization that is included in your lens. So only this OIS, optical stabilization. I'm gonna check how this thing works and whether it is useful or that is just a marketing feature. New feature is a separate menu item for timecode. We have more options to set up your timecode if you have to. So it's time to have a closer look. What is very important for me personally is the quality of the viewfinder, the EVF, electronic viewfinder. What I've noticed about this viewfinder that it's quite small. I don't know why, but when I look in the X-T3, this viewfinder, its coverage, it feels bigger. I know this small quirk about the Fuji cameras, that when you look into the viewfinder, you press the disp back button and your well, this image becomes bigger or smaller. But even in its bigger size, it appears, personally to me, it appears smaller than the X-T3. You know, if you compare such cameras as Nikon 780 with the Nikon 850, you know that the viewfinder in the top models is bigger. Well, if you look, for example, in Canon M50, it's really small, it's tiny, you can't look there. This is something like Canon 6D Mark II or the Nikon 780. I don't know why this viewfinder looks smaller than this one, but this is what I see. LCD quality is top-notch. I would compare it to Canon's screens, which are, I think, just on the top of the market. X-T3 screen is okay, but this one is even better. The colors are vivid, saturated. It has just little rolling shutter, so, well, as for the screen, it's very nice. My biggest complaint is the size of the viewfinder. Now I think it's time to test these cameras. We'll see how they shoot video and how they shoot photos, and is there any difference if there is some. This shot is made on Fuji X-T4. This one with the number 1, and this one with the X-T3. It has number 135. I deliberately underexposed both of these shots in order to see how well they will react if we push the exposure higher. When we have +1 stop of exposure, we see no noise at all, but the X-T4 we can notice that it's brighter. You see the shadows are better rendered well, and the image here is also a little brighter. So this is a pleasant news. What I also noticed that this lens, I have 2 copies of brand new 18 to 55 lenses, and this lens performs significantly better, because here we see soft edges, and in this shot the edges are razor sharp. I've made those photos using a tripod, and well, so all the conditions were totally the same, but I see a huge difference in the quality, what I have here and what I have here. Now I'm gonna push this image even more. I'll put 4 stops of exposure on both shots. So let's zoom in. Well, I see that the X-T4 is slightly brighter, you see this? But if you move into the shadows, I see that the shadows are even better, well, they're better rendered than on the X-T3. The difference is subtle. I wouldn't say that it's really significant, but I see that this image is brighter both in midtones and in the shadows. This test will show us how these cameras perform with a high ISO. So the ISO is 3200. Let's zoom in. How it looks, just the raw file out of camera. Well, I don't see a significant difference. What I see is that this lens is less sharp than the one on the X-T3. And if we go to the corners, we notice this again, that the lens perform differently, although they're totally, the model is the same. Let's push the exposure, for example, 2 stops of exposure, and I see noise on both photos. If we move here to more shadowy zone, well, the shadows are a bit brighter on the X-T4, but the noise to my eye it's the same. Even if there is some improvement in terms of noise reduction or I don't know, in processing power, I can't see it. To my eye, the noise levels are pretty close on these 2 cameras. This test is for the sensor stabilization in photo mode. I've tried different shutter speeds in order to understand where this stabilization works and where it doesn't. Well, 1 second is too much for this type of stabilization. I've tried 0.4, it wasn't good either. We see that those images are blurred, but 1/5 of a second, well, this is a sweet spot, because on a wide angle you can quite confidently shoot handheld photographs with the X-T4 and get sharp images. So for those who want to shoot some landscapes, but I must warn you that when you shoot landscapes, it's better to do this on the lowest ISO. And at this ISO, you won't be able to shoot in the night at 1/5. Even if you have some really nice lens with, I don't know, f2, f1.4, this is not enough. So best advice is to take a tripod with you. And in this example, we have 55 millimeters, and at 1/5 the image is still sharp. This is a pretty decent result, and I can tell you for sure that merely optical stabilization won't support you with this kind of stabilization. And this, well, no, here, no, not all of the shots are okay, but the probability to get a sharp shot is quite high on 1/5 of a second. Indeed, it depends on the focal length. Here we have 55 millimeters, and this is too much. But if you take the widest angle, 18 millimeters, then you can shoot handheld at 1/5 of a second. While I was testing these cameras, I noticed a huge technological leap in Fujifilm cameras, and it concerns not only crop cameras but also medium format models such as 50R and 50S, which I also tested. And now I'm gonna show you what is it all about. Let's have a look how do we change the white balance in Fujifilm X-T3, the custom white balance in Kelvins. So if I want to change the color temperature, I have increments in 300. I can't put 5500 or 400, either 300 or 600. So, well, no possibility for subtle adjustments here. So now I check the same feature, the color temperature, on the X-T4. I've made these items big just because I wanted to. So you see that the increments here are put well, for each digit separately. So I can put, for example, like this, it's 10,000 kelvins, and then I can put, for example, 5,000, and then the hundreds. I can choose this digit, and then even the decimals. So I can choose 10, 20, and so on. It looks like, you know, like a compensation for the X-T3, where you could only change like in 300s, and here you can change, you can put 10 kelvins if you want to. So this is a well pleasant feature for photographers who need this level of precision. So it's time to make conclusions about these cameras. Many people think either to buy this one, or whether to upgrade X-T3 to X-T4. Well, personally, to my opinion, it isn't worth it. Well, major differences is a flip out screen, that you can use this as a vlog camera. By the way, I use this all the time as a vlog camera, but I use it on a tripod from a distance, and presently I'm used to using it without that flip screen. So I just know what focal length I need, I know how to frame myself, and I use it for blogging style, but not like, you know, not handheld, but using the tripod, and it's okay with me. Then this camera has ultra slow motion, 240 FPS. Well, it's something I would say specialized. If you shoot something, I don't know, explosions, some action sports, then it may be useful and handy for you. But 120 FPS is also really decent slow motion, and the quality of this slow motion is quite nice here. This camera can do, well, it can slow down your video twice more. Whether you need it or not, well, it's up to you. But I want to warn you, about such thing as buying a camera depending on its parameters. Some people choose cameras depending on number of functions, number of additional things that it offers them, and at the same time they don't think whether those functions will be useful, whether will they use them or not. They just calculate, oh, this new camera has IBIS, it has flip out screen, it has so, okay, it has many things. Okay, give it to me, you can take my money back. But I'm personally, when I choose a camera, I think what is useful personally for me, what do I need and what I don't need. Both cameras can shoot photos, can shoot stills with like something around 20 frames per second. I mean, not video, but stills. I own these cameras, I own X-T3 for more than a year, and I didn't use this feature at all. I don't need, for example, ultra fast photo shoot. Well, it's my type of use. I used this slow motion 120 FPS, but really rarely. It's such a thing for me. Well, sometimes, you know, once in 2 months. It depends on what you shoot. In most cases, in most scenarios, 60 FPS is quite okay. As for the IBIS, it's a new feature for XT series, and before only XH1 had this feature in Fuji cameras, and of course medium format GFX 100, but this is top of the line. IBIS is of course better, but if you want complete freedom, you take a Steadicam. IBIS doesn't solve for all your problems. It's a feature that is, well, it's okay, it's pleasant, but it's not a deal breaker, not something that will change your life and make your videos look totally different. Well, it's my opinion. I'm not a fan of sensor stabilization, since it has its issues. As well as it's useful, it has also downsides. For example, it drains your battery quite fast and it heats your cameras. So just buying it because it has that IBIS, I think that this is not smart. Of course, if you want one of the top crop cameras available on the market, this is one of them, if not the one that is the top of the line, the crop camera. Because for me, this thing, in my opinion, is better than, for example, Sony A6600, which also has similar features. Well, Fuji cameras are more reliable, have better ergonomics, better EVF, better screens. These are all important things. But if you choose between Fuji cameras, well, my choice at present time, I would look at the Fuji XS10. This model is not yet available, well, in my country at least, but I wait for it because, well, what I like in that camera, because it's lighter than both of these cameras. I want a camera, a crop camera that will be light. This thing, this camera, well, it feels more like a full frame in terms of its size and weight. And in some way this eliminates the advantages of the crop system. Crop system has to be light. The crop system has to be lightweight and small. Well, the lens is indeed small, but the body itself, well, not really. And if you put such additional grip as I use on the X-T3 in order to hold this thing more comfortably, I like it with this grip. It adds additional weight. It's like 100 grams, but if you add it here, well, you'll have a camera that weighs same as the Canon EOS R that I use to film myself now. But this is a full frame body and this is a crop body. I don't like the idea of having a heavy crop body. And the XS10 is lightweight, it has a flip screen, it has nice ergonomics because of that large grip, and you don't have to buy that additional grip on the XS10, but it doesn't have 4K 60 FPS and doesn't have 10 bits. But I personally, I don't use 10 bits at all. Even if I shoot log, well, 8 bits okay. It depends what you're doing, which scenarios, but in most cases I don't feel that need to use that awful codec H265. It's really a bad codec, it's not for editing. In general, my attitude to Fuji cameras is that these are devices for enthusiasts. It's not bad. Of course, you can make good videos and photos with these cameras, no problems. But for my work, I prefer Canon and I prefer full frame body. for photo shoot, well, and video. Well, as far as video goes, for me personally, it's not so important whether it's full frame or it's crop. But in terms of ergonomics, in terms of lens choices, this system is more for enthusiasts. It's not so optimal in my opinion. There are some things that I like about these cameras. Well, I bought this camera, so definitely I like it, and I don't want to sell it and go change totally to Canon. I like it to be small. I repeat myself, but this is important for a camera of this type to be small and lightweight. In terms of ISO and dynamic range, they go quite nearly to the full frame body, so the possibilities of X-Trans sensors are indeed very good. But in terms of the depth, in terms of the colors that you get, these are really subtle differences, but I like a full frame for still shooting more. Well, to sum up, it's up to you, depends on your budget and to your, well, likes and dislikes. If a bit heavier body is not a problem for you, and if you want the top what you can get in a crop camera, then X-T4 is definitely for you. But if you, well, if you count your money and if you want decent quality and without paying extras, then X-T3 is also a quite is enough good for many needs. For most videographers and photographers, this will suit all of your needs. So this is my review. Thank you for your attention.